All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Let me get my credibility glasses on, and you can see that I am even more credible than I was just seconds ago.
What?
It's true. It's true. They work. We have everything where it should be. Kim is at her outpost.
Kim, how are you?
And Tony is at his.
Thanks, Tony.
We have a lot to get to today. David Cay Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winner, joins us today. Yeah. Looking forward to talking to David. Mr. Predicto is in position should he be required later in the program. I have viewer emails to me, and I will respond to them. I have a very exciting Trump news that you may not have seen. And I also have some polling information that might be of interest to you as well. I have a law and disorder because Trump is being sued again, everybody. Yeah. You got to get your lawsuits in soon. Get them while you can, you know. And I'm looking forward to detailing a lot of that for you.
I've never seen anything like it.
I'm looking forward as well to a trivia question that's of the last week. It's new trivia that's coming up for you, and it relates to American history. So I've got recent, super recent American history in a trivia question. I will, and I vow it now, get all of this in today. I don't like having to shove stuff to another day, so we will get everything that I've just mentioned into the show today. And a welcome to Trevor Starr in Hollywood, who opens up the world of Super Chats with a $10.10 Super Chat. That is his chosen number. He likes 1010. And he says, I woke up this morning to a bit of a shock. There was blood all over our dining table.
Oh, no.
And a big blood splotch on the carpet.
What happened?
I'm really hoping this has a happy ending. So far, it's got a pretty brutal first act. I don't know. He's left us with this. So here it is. And there's a second. Overnight, my cats had bitten into a bottle of fake blood that I had just bought.
What?
Maybe more on that another time. Still love my kitties, but I was so pissed, he says.
Wow.
Wow. Don't you hate it, everybody, when your animals get into the fake blood?
I do.
It really is a
problem. It's a conundrum.
It really is an issue, and I know the fake blood thing we'll have to get to another time. I can't remember any circumstance in my life during which I purchased fake blood, but I'm thinking it is, as Pietro's suggesting, Halloween related.
Yeah.
The horrors of Halloweening. Yeah. Anyway, the deal is as follows. I have viewer mail, which I'd like to get to, viewer listener mail, and then I do have a trivia question for you. I almost feel like I want to give you the trivia question before everybody gets too settled. You know what I mean? And when I say trivia question, it's something that everyone can play with.
Okay.
And even as I say it, I just want to make sure I have it, and I do. I've been sitting on this for a few days, and I hate sitting on things for too long. So I will ask the question now. You will participate live in the chat, and if you're watching or listening in replay, you can play in replay. That's the great thing about this. No Googling. You simply have to answer the following question. A rare copy of the U.S. Constitution, printed 237 years ago and sent to the states to be ratified, was just sold at auction. The auction went down in North Carolina. How much did this rare copy of the U.S. Constitution sell for in this auction? Throw me up a couple of guesses, and I will share them with those who are listening or watching.
I'm going to say, well, clearly we don't value the Constitution very much anymore, right? Half the country doesn't care.
I hadn't thought of that angle. Yeah. Well, it used to. I mean, a few years ago it would have been worth more, but now, you know.
Exactly. I have my pocket Constitution in my hand. I'm going to say 7.8 million.
7.8 million. I'm seeing 4 million, 3 million, 400,000, says Mario. Karen Cooper says 11 million, 500,000, says Janet. 2.75, says Jim. Nullifidian says 11,280. I get it. The U.S. Constitution, printed 237 years ago and sent to the states to be ratified, was sold at auction for $9 million is the answer we were looking for. Yeah.
Somebody
$9 million.
Reveres the Constitution.
Bidding took just over 7 minutes. Bids came in at $500,000 intervals for those who are interested. Most of the bids were over the phone. That's where a lot of these auctions go down, as you're aware now. People phone. And there was a pause, however, at $8.5 million. It looked like it was going to go for 8.5. Then someone on the phone last second bid on the 9 million.
Nice.
And so it went. A private auction. The name of the buyer not immediately released. I mean, you don't want your name all over the place. Everybody's going to stop by to want to see the Constitution. But $9 million got it done. This copy was printed after the Constitutional Convention finished drafting the proposed framework of the government in 1787, sent to the Congress, and it was requested then to be sent to the states to be ratified by the people. It's one of 100 copies printed by the Secretary of that Congress, Charles Thompson. Just 8 are known to still exist. The other 7 are publicly owned. So this is the only one privately owned for
Pietro
$9
said,
million.
how much does a pardon cost?
Yeah.
I think that $9 million is a lot cheaper than what Musk has paid for the presidency. What is that, 75 million?
Oh yeah, no,
I mean,
but that's well worth it. No, he's going to get way more as a result of that. Yeah, that's a send it to Pawn Stars, says Edward Lincoln. Yeah, that's right. The price of a Supreme now.
I mean,
price of a Supreme Court judge is a lot less than that.
Right.
But Musk is getting all the power. He's going to have all the power with the Trump presidency and the Trump administration. He actually may even serve within the administration. So for him, 75 million is nothing. You can go. He could really get into hundreds of millions, and it'll be worth it because they'll relieve him of all the regulatory burdens, some of which we spoke of yesterday. But
Delwood Help says purchased by one DJT.
There you go.
Purchased it so that if he wins on day one, he can stand in front of the American people and tear it up, throw it behind him, and little bits of pieces fluttering in the wind.
Well, he's pretty obvious about not caring about it, but that might be a little over the top even for Trump. I will say hello and thank you to the Trick Era. A $10 super chat. Because you are all great, says the Trick Era. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate being called great. I don't know that you have to tell everyone on the show that they're great. I think you can just leave your compliment at my feet, and I'll see to it that it's spread around. Is Trump still selling pocket pardons? How much do they go for, says Michael. Trump is still selling all his merch.
Yeah.
He's selling the sneakers. He's selling the second set. There's a second assassination attempt sneaker. There are also the NFTs. There is the platform on which you can trade crypto, which is a Trump platform, even though he doesn't really understand and was unable to explain how it works. And there are the Bibles. Now, the Bibles include the Declaration of Independence, as you're aware, as well as the Bibles, the biblical script. I have already talked to you about how they gamed up the request and the contract essentially dumping $3 million into Donald Trump's pockets. Which state did that? I want to say Oklahoma is what I want to say. They had a special bidding, essentially. They offered the contract for the Bibles that were going to go into all the schools, okay? It might have gone even beyond that, like to all the official institutional buildings as well, but definitely in the schools. And they said the contract has to provide for a Bible to come into all of these schools and be used, and it also has to not only have biblical text, but it has to contain the Declaration of Independence. That was their way. There's no Bible that contains the Declaration of Independence except the Trump Bible, and that was their way of dumping money into Trump's pockets. And of course, the Bibles are made, as is all of Trump's junk, in China. So much as he's America first, unless it comes down to my stuff. All right, that's the Constitution. That's Trump. I want to quickly address a couple of things on
The Mark Thompson Show.
There was a question on McDonald's. Hi, Mark. First time I've emailed you. So I'm thinking, I got trouble right here.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah.
What would move someone to email you? Let's find out.
So usually they're angry. That's why.
Yeah.
First time I've emailed you. I've followed you since hearing you on KGO Radio, beginning with the Trump years as president. I rarely miss one of your programs. That's nice. You got me through the Trump years without losing my mind. However, here it is. There it is. However, we always talk about the fact that people say, hey, I watch your show, I listen to your show, I think you're great, and this, that, and that. But, however, I question your discussion on Trump, quote, working at McDonald's, because I feel you left out something very important. If what I've read after the video first hit the real news, and that's in quotes, the real news, is true. The McDonald's was closed to the public for the political farce that this was, and the customers were his mega followers. Of course, that's true. Please, if you find out it was a farce, make a point to mention it. He is not sincere and normal. He is evil, she says. I know you said it was theater, and I understand that, but if it was a farce, voters need to know. If I read it wrong or missed what you said, then I stand corrected. My bad. Yeah, I get...
My bad. I'm sorry.
Thank you, your loyal listener and Patreon supporter. Come on, Patreon supporters. Sue M. Sue is right that the McDonald's was closed, of course. We talked about the fact that it was all theater, it was a photo op, but to be fair to Sue, I don't think I said that the McDonald's was closed. So the entire thing is farcical, but we knew that it was a photo op. So, and by the way, as I said, it was a good, fun photo op, although it's just, in a way, it's laughable, honestly. It's laughable. Here's a guy, as I said, he was born on third base, thinks he hit a triple. His dad gave him all of this money. He blew it. He was horribly profligate in his spending, in his acquisitions. He was awful in the way that he strategized and, from a business standpoint, squandered the money. You see a guy here who lost money on casinos in Atlantic City. He had multiple bankruptcies, and I understand bankruptcies can be a strategic business move, but he was declaring bankruptcies because he had far too much debt and far too much bad investment. What he was good at, Donald Trump, was associated with his name and marketing his name, and that's what he's done. He's marketed his name to the presidency. So back to McDonald's, when he's back to his humble roots, they aren't his humble roots. It was really a way to tweak Kamala Harris, who has referenced McDonald's in her past, but that's what it was. Yeah, it was a farce. It was not open. They closed down that McDonald's. But I'm going to say this. Donald Trump did receive a pin, and the pin that he received was a French fries certification pin. So That is not a joke. It is.
I've never seen anything like it.
I didn't even know it existed. This is in North Carolina. The Congressman Chuck Edwards there gave former President Trump a French fries certification pin honoring Trump's appearance working the drive-thru at a McDonald's. Of course, he wasn't working the drive-thru. It was closed, as Sue points out. But
and all the people in the drive-thru had been vetted. They were all Trumpy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the governor, the congressman who owns a bunch of McDonald's restaurants, by the way, said this: for those of you who did not get to see it, I offered because, I also own McDonald's restaurants. I know that you perfected your skills behind the counter a day or so, sir, and it was my honor to present President Trump with the French fries certification pin. This is what he said just as Trump was set to take the stage at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. So
now when he goes to prison after the election, when the sentencing kicks in, he'll have a skill. He can work in the kitchens.
Wow. Yeah. I love the narrative.
And this is their new hoax.
Yes,
Maybe?
well, the hoax, as hoaxes go. It was a big McDonald's hoax. So that's the story on that, and it's complete with the new information that he did receive a French fries certification decoder ring, or whatever the certification is. It comes with a little mini certificate. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
and of course the pin. He has the pin as well. Second, quickly, email. Hi, Mark and team. First, love the show. By the way, again, just say hi, Mark. Who cares about the team? I mean, really? I mean, again, it's all about me, everybody.
Do you know who I am?
Thank you.
I'm kind of a big deal.
Thank you. Anyway, hi.
Pretty good. John says his name is his name McCheese? Yeah. Mayor McCheese. That's perfect.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, Mayor McCheese. Yeah. Anyway, he's more Hamburglary, I think, than he is Mayor McCheese. But maybe you're right. Maybe Mayor McCheese. He certainly wants to run for mayor, even though he has the Hamburglary past. I think that's the parallel. Hi, Mark and team. First, love the show. Always a strong way to start any email.
Sure.
Second, these last few weeks are going to be hard. And third, the reason for this message: at a Wisconsin rally, Kamala Harris's response or timing to two call-outs in the crowd was awful. Two guys yelled, "Jesus is King, Jesus is Lord," and Kamala said, "You're at the wrong rally. It's the smaller one down the road." My Southern religious Trumpers, who are relatives, are going bananas over this disrespect and attack on Christianity, and as a result, posting many digs against Kamala and what a lowlife she is. I watched the entire thing because of this email, and thank you for the email. So it's not clear that she could hear exactly what they were yelling, but even if she could, she's in the middle of a rally, and she's not talking about Jesus or Christianity or anything, and two people yell, what do they yell? Jesus is
King or whatever.
Yeah, Jesus is King, and then Jesus is Lord, the other one wrote. Now, great, Jesus is King, Jesus is Lord. Fine. I mean, I've got no issue with Jesus is King, Jesus is Lord. Yeah. I don't even have an issue with you yelling it. If you're on a street corner somewhere, fine. But you're in the middle of a rally. She is speaking. When I say rally, the crowd was quiet. And you're in the middle of her remarks yelling something. I don't care what it is. You are a heckler, regardless of what you're yelling. All right? Unless you're yelling right on or whatever. Unless you're amen corner.
Were they dressed in Trump gear?
Oh,
Because
I couldn't see.
Trumpers. I thought two Trumpers interrupted her rally, and I thought she handled it in a great way.
Right, I thought so as well. And initially the reports were that she did handle it in a great way. And I think still the overwhelming number of reports are that she handled it in a great way. But what's happened is, and is referenced here, those who are Southern religious, at least this is according to the note here, my Southern religious relatives are going bananas over this disrespect on the attack on Christianity. Okay, so I did watch even some posts that were included here in her email. And, the reality is that she was just handling hecklers. She wasn't. It wasn't an attack on Christian. My God, she's far more church-going and church-respecting than is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is, again, performative and one-dimensional when it comes to, Christianity and Christians. He uses the religious right in an effective way, but meaning he's gotten some bang for it. But it's a transactional relationship. They show up for him, vote, and he'll deliver their judges and the rollback of Roe and whatever else they want. So finally, in closing, I would say, I just wouldn't sweat this. You're not going to get those voters anyway. Your Southern Trumpy relatives are not like, that does it. When she said you didn't acknowledge Jesus as king, now I'm not going to vote for her. They weren't voting for her anyway. So, and I don't think there's just much to this. So it's no wonder she says that the Harris people have ignored it. Yeah, I'd ignore it too.
I would ask your relatives if they're not worried about the 10 Commandments. What about, isn't there something in there about you should not commit adultery?
Well,
yeah,
he's a train wreck.
Commandments, and I think that the tenets of Christianity have been checked off and crossed out one by one. So I don't know. Yeah,
again, he's right. For those who are really into that stuff, 10 Commandments and stuff, Kim's right. He's an utter train wreck.
And if finally, you're comparing candidates, I'm just saying, whoa.
And then this from
the Mark Thompson Show.
Taiwan weighed in. We love our listener viewer in Taiwan. Hey, Mark, my thought for the day: how could Trump have more votes now than he had in 2020? Could there be more people, Democrats in particular, changing their votes to Trump this time around? No way. We even have more Republicans this time voting for Kamala. I don't get it, says Karen, listening in Taiwan. There are a lot of ways to slice and dice the vote, and your point is a good one if the implication is, look, there are a lot of Republicans now who are getting a pass for voting Democrat. They're getting a pass implicitly through people like Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney has aggressively gone out on the road with Kamala Harris. Did I send you any Liz Cheney stuff, Tony, or Liz Cheney on a panel? No, I didn't. That's weird. I meant to, but
it was good.
Yeah, I'll tell you why I didn't. Now I remember, because it was sort of the stuff that you're used to hearing. It was Liz Cheney up there saying, Kamala Harris will protect the Constitution. Kamala Harris will work for the people. Kamala Harris. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying it just didn't really give me much to sink my teeth into. I, as you know, am of divided mind on the Cheneys. Now, Liz Cheney is certainly the more palatable Cheney. Dick Cheney, I wish he would just go away. I couldn't have hated his endorsement of Kamala Harris more than I hated it. I think Dick Cheney is a war criminal. I think Dick Cheney has a dark spot in American history, and his involvement in the war in Iraq and the inflaming of that entire region through the war in Iraq to help his buddies at Halliburton and beyond, it's so reprehensible and disgusting and grotesque that I want nothing to do with her dad, Liz Cheney's dad, Dick Cheney. Liz Cheney, gave up her political career to speak out against Trump and to speak out what was going on essentially with a coup attempt and also with January 6th. I give her some credit for that. I think it took courage. And as I say, she sacrificed her entire political career. Now, she may reconstitute her political career in this weird space where you're between Republican and Democrat. The old GOP is dead, and now the new GOP, the rising MAGA GOP, the Trump-controlled GOP, doesn't have a spot for people like Liz Cheney. So she may find her way, and if Kamala Harris were to win, she could even serve in that administration as well. So the last thing I would say about Liz Cheney, though, and I'm sorry to make it a negative thing, but I still have an issue with Liz Cheney on the issues, meaning she's for a conservative Supreme Court, all right? She is for big tax cuts on wealthiest Americans. I don't see Liz Cheney as aligning with any of the values and any of the policies that I think work on the Democratic side. So I have this sort of love-hate relationship right now with Liz Cheney. But again, people change, and I give people room to change in my own mind as I evaluate them. So that's how I see her. But she, on the road, she's literally barnstorming now with Kamala Harris, going stop to stop through Pennsylvania, through Wisconsin, through Michigan. It's quite impressive. So she's a person, it seems like, who's good to her word. I'll say that. And the last thing that I will say, just on this, and thanks for that email, because it kind of gets me started on this, is that there's a weird thing that's happened, and I guess we're so desperate to save democracy and to stave off the threat of Donald Trump that we're not as bothered by it. But we really judge Kamala Harris in a different way now. She's so open to the GOP. She's so open to Liz Cheney, for example. And there are so many GOPers who are coming over to back Kamala Harris, many of whom served in the Trump administration. These are powerful endorsements. But I'm just wondering, you juxtapose that against what Trump is saying about Kamala Harris, which is that she's a radical lefty, communist, socialist. I mean, he just throw this stuff out there. But that stuff is regurgitated by his followers. And all I would say is she's not radical left. You only need to know who's endorsing her to know she's not radical left. There is not a radical left bone in Kamala Harris's body. In fact, Trump, who wants to get the government involved in a big way in the free markets, most of these Republicans are free marketeers. Well, Trump's all over it with tariffs. He wants to shut down industry from various countries. He wants the government to become very much involved in manipulating the markets. That'll have a detrimental effect on the American marketplace. He is far closer to a communist, government-controlled marketplace than Kamala Harris appears to be. So that's just 2 cents on that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. What is this? B.A. Ware, is that a real quote? Hang on. You have to see and smell and feel the circumstances of people to really understand them, Kamala Harris. Is that that's just related to kind of understanding the American people and the plight of the average American? I think that's fair. Look, if you're talking about average Americans, Kamala Harris is closer to an average American than Donald Trump. I mean, my God, and just in relation to those who have endorsed Donald Trump now, the idea that you could be endorsed by Milley, Esper, Bolton, Kelly, Mattis, all of whom served under Donald Trump. I mean, it's an incredible thing. It really is. I mean, think about that. How many former officials from a past administration where the guy's looking to be either reelected or elected, in this case, would sign on to a joint statement endorsing your opponent? It's remarkable. And they don't just endorse the opponent. They speak vigorously and full-throatedly about the threat that the opponent is to national security and to the nation.
I mean, it had to be severe. All these people working with Trump and closely with Trump. Imagine how severe it would have to be for you to come out against him like that, to warn the American people like that. I don't know that this is quite as severe as that, or, earth-shattering, but yesterday I saw that another Republican is throwing support behind Harris, and that is Gerald Ford's daughter, Susan Ford Bales.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see
Susan
that?
Ford. Right.
Yeah,
I didn't see that, no.
She said that she has policy differences with Vice President Harris, but she said her integrity and commitment to the same principles that guided Dad have led me to conclude that Kamala Harris should be elected the 47th president of the United States. And in doing so, she also referenced January 6th and said that I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back for her. So
That's interesting. I mean, you don't think of Susan Ford as being politically active in any way, but nonetheless, it's like, get out of my way. I want to endorse Kamala Harris. No, I want to endorse her. I want to endorse her.
But I mean, she's from a heavily Republican family.
Sure.
You know, it's a
Sure.
shakeup if they digress from their, long-held principles. And I
Right.
think when you look at what those principles really are, it's putting the country first. So it's another example. And maybe if someone like Susan Ford Bales, is okay with supporting a Democrat, other people who have a problem with September, or rather January 6th, and what Trump is saying about the Constitution, maybe they'll go, oh, well, she's doing that. Okay. All right. I hear you.
Yeah, it's sort of what we were talking about. It's the excuse you need, like, okay, well, I guess, as a Republican, I can still vote Democrat here. Most of the indications are there are many high-profile Republicans who are doing that. One of the things, and I'll just mention this, is that they are quite aggressive in marketing this on the Harris side. So in swing states, they are marketing in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, et cetera, now, into Nevada and Arizona, et cetera. They are marketing the fact that, hey, look, his own people aren't voting for him. People who served in his administration. Not only that, they're out talking about how dangerous he is. Yep. Trump tapped then General Mark Milley to serve as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. After working side by side with Trump, Milley now believes the Republican is, quote, fascist to the core and, quote, the most dangerous person to this country. Trump tapped Mark Esper to serve as the secretary. There's Milley. Tapped Mark Esper to serve as the Secretary of Defense. After working side by side with Trump, Mark Esper concluded that Trump is, quote, unfit for office, a national security threat, and a threat to democracy. That was from his Secretary of Defense, Esper. Trump tapped General James Mattis to serve as the Secretary of Defense. The Secretary of Defense job, and like many Trump jobs, sort of a revolving door in a sense. You're only there for, a limited time. Remember, he called him Mad Dog Mattis. He introduced him as Mad Dog Mattis. Mm-hmm. After working side by side with Trump, Mattis reportedly told Bob Woodward that he also sees Trump as, quote, a threat to the United States. He tapped retired General John Kelly to serve first as the Homeland Security Secretary, then as White House Chief of Staff. After working side by side with Trump, retired General John Kelly concluded that Trump is, quote, poisoning people's minds and has serious character issues and is not a real man. Kelly also said that Trump has, quote, no idea what America stands for and has no idea what America is all about. Yep. And has nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law. John Bolton, who served as his White House National Security. And by the way, a lot of these guys are like, John Bolton, I have no appetite for this guy. But he called Trump straight. He worked side by side with Trump, and he warned, quote, a mountain of facts demonstrates that Trump is unfit to be president. If his first 4 years were bad, a second 4 years will be worse. So there's never been anything like this in American history. If you're an on-the-fence voter, you're realizing that leading members of the guy's own national security team are disgusted by him. They describe him as a fascist, as a threat to democracy, as a threat to national security. It's an extraordinary thing. It really is.
I was watching this piece on what fascism is with these two experts, one from NYU and one from Yale. I think it was on MSNBC, which, you can say, well, there's your source. That's why, they would say this. But they were experts who had written books and studied fascism. And what they were saying is, and they're looking at different phraseology that Trump is using when he speaks, like the vermin thing. He recently, the enemy from within, these types of phrases and comments that are coming from his mouth. And they look back in history and they're saying the problem with everybody accepting this, and the media as well, is that it normalizes these types of words and these types of comments. And when you normalize this type of stuff, you don't see what's coming. That the last thing people should be doing is thinking this is normal or this is okay. So it was a real severe warning as to, his manner of speech and what may be coming.
He's become really aggressive. I also watched him from Doral today. We'll run some of that when David Cay Johnston gets here in just a few minutes. But he can also sound reasonable. I don't want to make him sound like he's unhinged all the time. That can be disarming because he sort of seems as though he's together, but he's not together. And he is ready to sell out anything, any precept of any policy. Look at what he did on electric cars. He talked about electric cars as though they are going to ruin America. Now he embraces Elon Musk, and he's changed his view on that. He still, I noticed even in his Doral remarks, he still defaults to that position, which is that the electric vehicles have all sorts of problems, and I'll play you some of that. No Contendo, with a super chat, says, KH says 45 will unleash the military on U.S. citizens. Well, he already did. KH and mainstream media need to show the private security forces in Seattle on Black Lives Matter and D.C. Yeah, it's true. I don't know how much is available. We're talking about the unmarked feds, presumably feds, who moved in and took out a lot of demonstrators there in Seattle. I don't know where that video is. I don't know exactly where that reporting is. I think the reporting on it that I saw was somewhat thin. There just weren't a lot of facts there, and I think that was deliberate. I mean, who do you talk to? There are no official spokespeople. Everybody denies everything. So it's a little harder, no Contendo, I'd say, on that. 45 attacks Muslims and non-whites. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I don't know what miss me with that BS, or miss me or kiss me. Sometimes I need some decoding, but you're right. I mean, look, his attacks on Muslims, I mean, he started his administration with the Muslim ban. Yeah. No Contendo also says 45 with, maybe I should just do the show with no Contendo. Is that,
sure.
Yeah. Right,
why not?
Right. 45 with his jacket off. You see his muffin top, 300 pounds. Yeah, well, I give him, look, the guy's got the French fries pin from his McDonald's work on the fryer. You got to represent, man. I mean, if you got the French fries pin, you can't be some thin guy. You got to come in and look like you have experience with French fries personally as a retail user. They love their McFellin, says Mindy. Thank you for that. If you want to reach us by email, it's themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. It's that simple. themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. You got to put the in there, otherwise it doesn't go to us. themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. That's how you reach us. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
An analysis by a watchdog that is neutral. A committee for a responsible federal budget saying that a second term under Donald Trump would lead to a 33% cut in Social Security by 2035. And that is well ahead of other projections were nothing to change. The second presidential term would drive Social Security to insolvency 3 years earlier, and it would eventually slash benefits that come from Social Security by nearly a third. This is again from a nonpartisan budget watchdog group. They estimate Trump's plans for massive deportations, tariffs, and tax cuts would drain the program's trust fund by 2031 and lead to a 33% cut in Social Security benefits by 2035. The trust funds would be insolvent only 6 years after the next president takes office. The idea somehow that Social Security could be endangered has always been the third rail of American politics, but all of a sudden it seems to be in play. It really does seem to be in play. The ending taxes on overtime and tips, ending taxation of Social Security benefits, they factor all of those things into this bottom line. And he does have the authority to deport unauthorized immigrants and to impose those tariffs. He wouldn't need approval from Congress to do that. Now, the tax stuff, he would need Congress for. You can't all of a sudden levy new taxes or reduce taxes without congressional approval. So that part he would need Congress for. The nonpartisan group projected the plans would deplete Social Security's finances by $2.3 trillion over a decade. So they come to the fact that he's an imminent threat to Social Security.
Don't they want to get rid of Social Security and Project 2025 anyway? He probably doesn't care that his economic policies would, push Social Security into insolvency that much faster. But
he doesn't care about any policy, really. It's all a play for him to get richer. He really is open for business. That's the only thing he cares about. And he cares about what? He cares about his ego. He cares about, but let me make a point about the last thing. He understands that if you really go after Social Security, that is a political loser. You don't want that on your reputation. So I believe Trump would try to steer clear of eliminating Social Security in any kind of high-profile way. But I think he would he'd agree to some kind of policy that doesn't feel as though it's eliminating Social Security, when actually Social Security would be on its merry way to insolvency.
Sure.
So yes. So I don't think he's going to make any high-profile proclamations about getting rid of Social Security because he understands what a political loser that is. But I do believe he would absolutely sign legislation or decree from the executive office any number of things that would lead to privatization and or elimination of Social Security. As they put it, the handouts that typify liberal America.
Can you imagine if they got rid of it? How many people in this country, that's their retirement plan?
Sure.
I mean, they're already living in poverty. They're already, worried that they're not going to be able to pay their rent and they'll be evicted. For them to not have that money every month, awful.
I completely agree. It's become such a part of American life, and it even is associated with that which is laudable about government. You know what I mean? That the government will take care of you to this small amount and this small degree, and you pay into it. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like, hey, dude, what do you mean? I've been paying into it all my life. In Michigan and North Carolina, judges have rejected a Republican attempt to have certain overseas and military absentee ballots thrown out. The RNC filed these challenges in separate lawsuits earlier this month, accusing the states of permitting people who have never lived in either jurisdiction, they're overseas, they're in military, to vote.
Well, we know yesterday, Greg Palast told us it's a free shot.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. What Kim is saying is that to challenge and throw out any voter and any group of voters, even by the thousands, is a free shot because there are no repercussions to you being wrong. So if the ruling is no, you can't eliminate them from the voter rolls, you pay no price for having brought the action to begin with. Each lawsuit states that the Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act was passed to ensure members of the U.S. Armed Forces and other American citizens living outside of the U.S. may vote in federal elections, but they are saying that they are those who are, they're saying the right to vote from those who are born overseas but have a parent or guardian or spouse who's last lived in one of these states, that should be challenged. It should not be permitted. They kind of threw this out on technical consideration. So they're saying that the RNC waited too long, for example, to file its complaint in Michigan. And, Michigan electors have already begun to cast their absentee ballots. 31%. That's more than almost 700,000 ballots have already been cast. So it's a little late to get into this. And in fact, the court basically said, hey, the Secretary of State has no way to get involved in this now. We're just too far down the way. But they also noted in North Carolina that the RNC did not present, quote, any evidence of even a single specific instance of any registrant unlawfully availing themselves of this statutory provision. So in other words, this is another RNC legal action that really has no teeth. So those are the latest. Apollo says this, guys, 13 days until the elections, we need a plan to destroy their favoritism. The Fox News interview was a terrible idea. The poly market, 66% to 34%. I don't think the Fox News interview was a terrible idea. It's interesting, Paulo. I get. By the way, what is that? It's R. What is that? Do we establish what that was on there, Tony? What is that? R. What is it? Is it a? You see how it's? Is it a ruble? Is it a rupee? Is it a? You see next to the dollar amount, the R.
Yeah.
Someone can tell me.
No clue.
What is it, Tony?
I have no idea. Let me see what I can figure.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks for breaking in with that. But
Thanks, Tony.
I don't know that it was a terrible idea. I thought it was actually a good idea to do it. I think there is a double standard. Trump has done nothing. He's done only these friendly sit-downs, and he addresses groups in various ways. But he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't put himself in the heat.
I think is it a Brazilian real?
Oh,
possibly a real, or it could be a South African rand.
Yeah, rand, right? Because the real
probably
is
a rand. A
Saudi,
real is, I
right,
think, too. It wouldn't be a $5. It would be like $50.
South African rand is South
I think it's
Africa.
a rand.
South
Okay.
Africa,
Yeah,
everybody's
there we
saying.
go.
Yeah. Real, Brazil is what Paulo's saying. Oh, Brazil.
I was
Shout
wrong.
out to Brazil.
I should have
yeah.
looked the name Paulo. But I'm an idiot.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sorry.
How do you think I feel? I'm supposed to be the, he's from South America. So they're okay. We got it now. All right. Yeah. Okay. What is it? Donald would eliminate Social Security and Medicare beginning on day one. I don't know if he can do that. I don't think he can eliminate the two on day one. Maybe day 7. I mean, I definitely think, it would be on the agenda. Yeah, they definitely want to roll back Social Security and Medicare and other things that they view as sort of entitlement programs. But
The Mark Thompson Show.
well, the one thing about entitlement programs is that you are entitled to them. You pay into them, so you ought to get that money. That's what I would say. I'm looking at the clock. David's just minutes away. I've got time for Kim's news, and then I want to get to David Cay Johnston. I also have a law and disorder I've got Trump in law and disorder. I've got Giuliani in law and disorder. What should I do?
Oh gosh, I'll go for law and disorder first, and then. Well, we only have 10 minutes until David Cay Johnston. Let's do law and disorder, and then maybe I can do news after Mr. Johnston comes
And we'll
by.
figure it out. Okay, so smash the like button if you would. Helps us in the world of YouTube. And please share the show or any segments. So coming up, we have David Cay Johnston. He's always worth listening to. And you can share that across Facebook about places we don't really have a big presence. We have to really increase our footprint. Kim's tried to give us some footprint on Facebook. We used to simulcast to Facebook. I don't know what happened with that. I guess we have to get to, what is it, Tony? What is the other one? TikTok we got to get to. What is the other one? You kids, you're on,
Instagram?
what is it? TikTok, Instagram? Yeah, we got to get on those.
Rumble? Twitter or Twitch?
Man, Rumble would change the... That would change the chat pretty much. Anyway, smash the like button.
Just saying what's out there, man.
Rod.
Yeah, just share us where you can. And
The Mark Thompson Show.
all right, let's do it. This is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
Pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care.
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Yesterday, members of the Central Park Five filed a defamation suit against former President Donald Trump, accusing him of spreading, quote, false, misleading, and defamatory statements about their 1989 case. He did this during the September 10th ABC News presidential debate, according to this court filing. There they are. Attorneys representing the five men filed their civil suit against Trump in federal court in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. They are seeking monetary damages over his statements, which they say have caused them, quote, severe emotional distress and reputational damage. They were teenagers when they were accused of the violent rape of a female jogger in Central Park. This is in 1989. The five have always maintained their innocence. They were convicted and served years in prison. But a decade after the attack, a different man confessed to the crime. And through DNA analysis, the story was corroborated. And these guys were acquitted. During the debate, though, Trump was responding to a statement from Vice President Kamala Harris in which she revisited his full-page ad in the New York Times in the wake of the incident, and he called for the execution of the Central Park Five. He said, quote, they come up with things like what she just said, going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately, and if they pled guilty, then they pled we're not guilty. Meaning they pled guilty, then they pled we're not guilty. The lawsuit points out that Trump's statements were false in multiple respects. None of the members of the Central Park Five ever entered guilty pleas in the case. None of the victims of the Central Park assaults were killed. And the mayor at the time of the assaults was Ed Koch. It wasn't even Bloomberg. And Koch did not agree with Trump's position with the full-page ad. So they are pursuing this, and because of the severe emotional distress, they expect that they are legitimized in bringing this case. And now, according to the court filing, they may get something. We'll see. I may ask David Cay Johnston about this. I think it's worth weighing in on it. There's no question. There's no question it's defamatory.
And it's been over for so long, and still he's, accusing them of being guilty when they obviously were not.
Yeah. There it is. Thank you. That's the site of the Central Park Five accused assault. But again, the entire thing.
Imagine how much that
turned upside down by that DNA evidence. Yeah. Yeah. Rudy Giuliani has to give up control of his luxury items, his Manhattan apartment, to the Georgia election workers that he defamed. Wow, it's a defamatory law and disorder. If you defame someone, we've got you right here. A federal judge today ordering Trump attorney and New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani to turn over all his valuable possessions and his Manhattan penthouse apartment to the control of Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. The Georgia election workers that he defamed. What's that?
Pretty good. His Manhattan apartment that he has to give to them?
Yeah, it's not just an apartment, it's a penthouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He now owes them, I'll just recall it for you, $150 million. So, you're going to have to come up with something. You're going to have to turn over something to make good on that debt. Judge Lewis Lyman of the federal court in Manhattan said Giuliani must turn over his interest in the property to the women in 7 days to a receivership that they will control. The judge's turnover order of the luxury items is swift and simple, but the penthouse apartment will have its control transferred, so Freeman and Moss can sell it, potentially for millions of dollars. The women who counted Georgia ballots, you'll recall, after the 2020 election, will also be entitled to about $2 million in legal fees that Giuliani has said the Trump campaign still owes him. This all in the judge's order.
So where will Giuliani live then, if he doesn't live in his fancy penthouse?
He may want to move in with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, that's, that's his old buddy. But he can every day go, hey, how's the $2 million coming that you still owe me? That's Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Smash the like button as you do on YouTube. It costs you nothing, and it does help us in this world of YouTube. We'll do a quick sweeper here, and then we'll get to living in a van down by the river. That's where that's where Rudy Giuliani is. Very nice, MJ Daniel. Well done, Mark. Will you please defame me so I can sue your ass? Very, very good. No, yeah. We'll do a quick sweeper and then David Cay Johnston as we continue. Mark Thompson's show.
Do you feel it? It's the Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Joe Box and Little Anthony.
I'm not gonna cry! I'm not gonna cry!
Someone did this to spoil our Christmas.
Seriously, what the f? Did you really just do that?
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
Can you let him finish, sir?
Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Wow. I like to have a little sort of a dignity moment before David Cay Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winner, comes on. But the last drop is "Pull up your pants, young man." It's a hard turn for me to make, but it is a great pleasure on Tuesdays to have this guy join us. He is a Pulitzer Prize winner and the co-founder of DC Report, which is a terrific website, continues to do such good work journalistically. There it is, DC Report. He co-founded it some years ago. And he's a multiple best-selling author. When it comes to Trump, he has forgotten more than many have ever known about Donald Trump. Incredible compendium of information. Here he is, David Cay Johnston. And David,
hello, Mark.
You've been quite prolific on Twitter as well, on X. I don't know where to even start. You have Tony has it all up. I've also got a mashup I want you to kind of comment on, because Trump's been, quite chirpy of late in a lot of different forums. Can you play for David Cay Johnston, Tony, one of those mashups with Trump speaking? We have him in a couple of different places. Yeah, this is him on Fox News. This is a little bit of a mashup. I just want to kind of get your thoughts as to where he is and where this race is. Go ahead, Tony. Thank you.
A day of love that sparked a lot of reaction. Can you understand why many Americans would view it as a dark and tragic day in our history?
The crowd I spoke before, which you rarely see, I have pictures of it, they're massive, but nobody wants to put them in. It was the biggest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I've spoken to the biggest crowds. I've never seen that many people. I tell you, there was a beauty to it and there was a love to it that I've never seen before.
The enemy within is a pretty ominous phrase if you're talking about other Americans.
I think it's accurate. I think it's accurate.
After our interview, Donald Trump flew to Pennsylvania, Arnold Palmer's hotel, where he discussed the golfer's signs of his manhood.
This is a guy that was all man. This man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God. That's unbelievable. All right. I had to say it.
Yeah, so David Cay Johnston, there's a little cross-section of sort of the lunacy. But what's your take on Trump right now and where he is?
Well, Donald is under tremendous stress. He knows that unless he gets back to the White House, his future is prison. Multiple prison terms. He'll spend probably the rest of his life in prison. And that kind of stress, the sleeplessness that it will induce, combined with, the jumble that is his mind, is going to lead to him engaging in all sorts of behaviors for which he will feel some comfort. Now, the crude and completely inappropriate remarks about Arnold Palmer, which I have my students analyzing this week. How should you report this if you're going to report it at all? Those remarks are indicative of his anxieties. Shortly after he made these remarks, Stormy Daniels tweeted that Donald Trump is no Arnold Palmer.
Right.
So
what do you tell your students, David? What do you tell your students? There's actually an argument for not covering it. Is that what you were kind of hinting at?
No, I don't think there is an argument, but I want students to contemplate and consider that.
I see.
My students in this class are not. Maybe one or two of them will become journalists, but they're taking a course about journalism, and so we talk a lot about ethics, how news is gathered, how you verify facts, and this was, I thought, a great opportunity to talk about. How do you deal with something as completely unexpected? Nobody else in national politics has ever said anything like this. How do you deal with it? And keep in mind, as I said to them, that it's a, quote, family newspaper. It's a family radio station you're working for. It's a family TV station. NPR dealt with it by saying simply, Mr. Trump also made a remark about Arnold Palmer's anatomy, which I think that's completely useless. You might as well.
I agree. I mean, that's like dry cleaning the entire remark.
Yeah. So, but Donald is falling apart mentally, and we've seen this getting worse and worse and worse. And of course, whatever Donald says about you, he's talking about himself. So when Donald says, we need to have a cognitive test for Kamala Harris, he's talking about himself. And by the way, this week, Donald doubled down, as you were talking about in the previous segment on your show, on the Central Park Five. This is the exact news peg that could be used by any big news organization to talk about the extensive public record on how Donald Trump was business partners with one of the biggest cocaine traffickers in America. This guy, Joseph Wexelbaum, who lives in Santa Monica, ran his helicopters for high rollers to his casinos. He was the personal pilot of Trump in the European helicopter Trump called the Ivana back in the day. And Donald did extraordinary favors for this fellow that make no sense whatsoever, unless they were not just in the helicopter and some other things together, they were in the cocaine trafficking business. And if that's the case, everything Donald did makes perfect sense. Now, I wrote about this back in 1992.
I remember reading it in your book.
Yeah, it was Wayne Barrett, the late great Wayne Barrett, who dug this up. And then I pursued it. The state of New Jersey officials, casino regulators, did what they always did with Donald. Well, there wasn't sufficient evidence to establish, that, of course, is the opposite standard applied to anybody else, which was, well, we don't have sufficient evidence, but it looks bad, you lose your license.
Yeah, I recall it in the book. I just recall it. You played it very both circumspectly, but also with all the details there. Like you didn't jump to the conclusion. It was a very journalistically responsible way to handle it.
And the most significant thing in that case was that after Joe Wexelbaum is caught and makes a long written confession, which I have, he asked that his case, which is in Cincinnati, be transferred to either New York City federal court or Miami federal court because he has homes there. And instead, it's transferred to New Jersey federal court where no crime is alleged. And my goodness, it goes before a brand new federal judge, Marianne Trump Berry, Donald's sister.
That's just wild.
While she recused herself, she left the case. Imagine, Mark, just imagine you're the chief federal judge in New Jersey. This newly appointed judge comes in and says, well, I can't handle this case because this man is partners with my brother. And by the way, I fly often in my brother's helicopter with this man as the pilot. And my husband, who's an attorney for my brother's casinos, he flies in this man's helicopter several times a week going back and forth to Atlantic City. Imagine, I think your first thought would be, oh my God, I hope the newspapers never hear about this because I can't have a federal judge who's flying around in the helicopters of a drug trafficker. And then he writes a letter to the new judge saying, Joe is a stand-up guy. He's a credit to the community. He shouldn't serve any time at all. The guy ends up serving 18 months. The mules who simply drove the drugs, and we're talking about tons and tons of marijuana and hundreds of kilos, if not thousands of kilos of cocaine. They got 20 years just for driving the drugs. And the kingpin gets 18 months?
Yeah. That's how you know the fix is in. I mean, It's just extraordinary. I wanted you to...
Well, if he wants the death penalty for drug traffickers, Donald should probably get in line.
The Doral stuff, will you play some of that, Tony, too? And then we can wrap up on what he said. But I find his invention of facts particularly galling, especially when it comes to electric vehicles. And he makes stuff up. And I wonder, and this is kind of what I'm going to get to after we watch this, to what degree does that work for him? Like, is that sticking? But I want you to see what he said. Go ahead, Tony, please.
I mean, think of it. They want to go to all electric cars, the whole thing electric. They need $9 trillion, I read the other day, to do a charging station, Max. He owns the gasoline stuff, and to do a charging station. And they built 8 charging stations up in the Midwest someplace. They spent $9 billion.
That's just not true. This is all completely invented.
You know what that is? A charging station is like a gas pump. It's the equivalent of a gas pump. They spent $9 billion for 8 charging stations. So if you look at it that way, if you did the whole country, you would have spent $30 trillion, okay?
This is all invented, absolutely not true.
Which is
not only that, his math is wrong.
It's so out of control.
Based on the first example.
It's so horrible.
Yeah.
And they don't want to change.
He makes his points in these over-the-top cartoonish ways, but he throws these numbers out and you go, oh my God, this is shocking. Yet these aren't the numbers. They're not even close to the numbers.
I have a charging station in this house. It cost me $499. If you want a high-speed charging station, one that'll do up to 350 kilowatts, and you don't want one of those, frankly, because it's terrible for your battery, but those cost on the order of $40,000. And because you're selling the electricity, you can get that money back. It's an investment, just like building a gas station is an investment. But Donald is making the same kind of argument that Barack Obama in the 2008 campaign humiliated Mitt Romney with. When Mitt Romney went through, we don't have nearly as many this and that we had in 1917. And Barack Obama said, no, we don't have nearly as many swords anymore because we're not fighting with a cavalry on horseback. Donald he doesn't know anything. He is profoundly ignorant. And, 8 stations cost $9 billion. That's over $1 billion a station. I mean, that should be so absurd. But to people who see Donald as their champion and their savior. Doesn't matter what he says, and they'll excuse it away. Oh, well, that's just Donald being Donald, or he must have been a little confused about the numbers, or, well, no, that's what those things cost. You lying press, you won't tell us the truth. And this is not going to change. We have 2 weeks left. I think you're going to see him make even crazier statements between now and then.
As president, I was just going to say,
whether they get
coverage.
Yeah, and covered the way he says them. I mean, Dan Frumkin, a very good press critic you might have on as a guest sometime, formerly a Washington Post columnist. Dan has a piece out this week about how the New York Times, which matters because every other major news organization in the country looks to the Times every day for guidance on how to treat this news. The Times keeps sane washing and generalizing in a way that mischaracterizes instead of just quoting what Trump says. And I understand the idea that you don't quote somebody whose comments don't make sense, except it's relevant to quoting Trump. Just say, former President Trump said, and, verbatim, just quote him. And if it's 200 words of nonsense, readers should know that. And you can't, it's not valid to say, well, we did that, a year ago. No, you have to do that every time.
The trick says Tesla garage charger. I paid $5,000. I now hate Tesla because of Musk. Sad but true. Just on the Musk thing.
That's because Musk made you buy a specialized charger that only works with Teslas.
Sure.
You could have bought a charger like mine for my Volkswagen electric for nothing. $500.
Yeah, you can convert, but yeah, David's right. There's the Tesla chargers. Well, they're not converting, so it's a simple conversion. But I want to ask you about Musk real quick because I went off on him the other day, and I think I promised I was going to go off on him again before the election because I see so much in the way of conflict for Musk. I've always felt as though he had already achieved a bunch of regulatory capture just by virtue of his oversized place at the government table. They need him for SpaceX. They have him, and he's so connected in ways that he's really the tail wagging the dog. But were he actually to get into a Trump administration, David, wow, I mean, those conflicts would then, be writ large.
This is an area where, by the way, the New York Times did a fabulous, fabulous story on Monday about all the conflicts of interest that Elon Musk would face. And, when Trump says, well, I waste, fraud, and abuse, I'm having Elon Musk handle all that. Politicians my entire life and probably my great-grandparents' entire lives have been running on, we're going to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. It's a fiction, and various alleged areas of fraud and abuse, the earned income tax credit, when they were thoroughly investigated, it turns out, no, these were just administrative errors, two couples who'd broken up, both the mom and dad trying to claim the kids, and it hadn't been sorted out yet, that sort of thing. I mean, it's not there. And furthermore, I'm not sure I want a federal government that is perfectly efficient. I think some inefficiency in government has a benefit to society, not incompetence, but some inefficiency, so that we don't have a government that can carry out terrible things. And Trump is a guy who has said repeatedly, as soon as he gets in office, he's going to arrest people, he's going to deport people, it's going to be bloody. He's going to do a whole bunch of things that no president has ever done. And even the Supreme Court's decision from 2 years ago, he could do that. He could order. He said he hates me more than any other journalists in America. He could just order me arrested. Doesn't matter. There's no charge. He could suspend habeas corpus by claiming that there is an insurrection underway, and that is what's necessary to suspend habeas corpus, which the Constitution, by the way, doesn't ever describe as a right. It calls it a privilege.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, the door, I think, will be kicked open if he if he ascends to the presidency. And as I say, I think, Musk is seeing to it that at least he'll have one big social media company all the way to the finish line. And Musk is dumping real money on him. It's a weird thing, these tech bros. That's the New York Times piece that speaks to all of it. But basically what you're seeing there, it's very hard to pick up just glancing at it, but you'll see that Musk has a ton of federal contracts. I'm talking about billions and billions of dollars worth of federal contracts and federal benefits. And that's why I say he's already in tight with the government, even as he's oppositional, I understand, because he's trying to get Trump in. But he wants even more power and a real place at the government table, which Trump is ready to give him. I mean, Trump just wants to go play golf. So, so that's just a list of all those. Yeah.
In the 19th century, the French novelist Balzac wrote that behind every great fortune lies a great crime. And I've argued for a long time that in modern America, behind every great fortune lies a government contract. Oracle started out with that. Microsoft got lots of government contracts early on that got it going. When a businessman on my street asked me to consult with him on a business problem he was having, my solution to him was, you got to get one or more county governments to buy your products, and then it'll take off. But if you can't get, this is a government product, a service.
Sure.
You can't. You got to get government to do it. Quit trying to sell this to businesses. They'll adopt it after government does.
Such a great.
And Musk is, Musk is committing crimes right now. He's giving $1 million a day to people who sign a petition promising to vote for Trump. That's clearly buying a vote, and he should be told by authorities in any one of the jurisdictions where he's doing this that you are going to be prosecuted.
What's happening on that, David? It's odd that he could make this statement. I understand where these statements come from. They come from utter ignorance about the laws or disregard for the laws. He's
disregard. He's not ignorant. He's got lots of expensive lawyers on his staff.
So what? And is it because he's counting on those lawyers, not that he can get away with this this illegality?
Nobody in government's going to come after me. I'm the richest man in the world. How dare you? We'll squash you. I mean, Donald told a fellow who I believe, I interviewed him at great length, was assigned as a relatively new auditor at the IRS decades ago to do his returns. And Donald said, now you listen to me. You're not going to get $1 from me. I have loss carry forwards, which means you won't pay any taxes in future years. And if you want to ruin your career, you go right ahead, because my lawyers will tie you up for the rest of your sad, awful existence. And the guy's boss told him to, shut the audit and walk away. And I've heard stories like that a number of times from IRS agents where people succeeded in basically saying, we're going to tie up all the IRS resources, and they didn't get an audit.
It's just, it's wild. Now, Tony, did you call up David's ex Twitter feed? Speaking of Musk, but there's some tweets on here that are just priceless. I wanted the Navalny tweet.
No.
Do you have that? Yeah. Do you have that there? No. Maybe you can recreate it for us.
Medusa is a former Russian news service that has been banned, so they've had to go and leave the country.
There it is.
And they've got there we go. They've got a whole bunch of leaked documents showing that Putin's regime was out to get Navalny when he was in prison. They claimed he wasn't available because there were power outages at a prison he wasn't even at. And they did a whole bunch of just awful, cruel things. And what's astonishing is not that they did this. I mean, Russia is a de facto dictatorship led by the modern czar. What's astonishing is that somehow these documents got out. And they show how utterly corrupt Putin is and how Putin will not tolerate any criticism. Remember, the women in the banned Pussy Riot went to prison. And Donald is the same. He says, you shouldn't be able to write things about me unless I approve of them.
That's right. He doesn't want anything critical. I mean, that's exactly right, David. Right. In fact, he's talked about, and this is interesting. I'll just remind everybody, Navalny was the opposition leader in the Russian elections that might really challenge Putin. It was getting way too popular for Putin, clearly. and that he died in that in the prison. But it's interesting that Trump is talking about pulling the licenses of various broadcast networks and news organizations because he feels as though they are misrepresenting the truth. I mean, there's a certain irony about that, of course. But
so here's one of the unresolved things about this terrible Supreme Court decision on immunity. If no official act of the president is reviewable by any court, and Donald Trump says, I'm going to cancel your FCC license to broadcast over the airwaves without cause, without any evidence of wrongdoing, that's an official act. Would it be reviewable? And in the meantime, would you be allowed to continue running your business, or would the government's position of taking away your license prevail pending the resolution of the case, which could take 10, 20 years? The opportunities for Trump to test this and push this are extraordinary. I mean, what if he were to say, well, I need 3 more Supreme Court appointments, so arrest the 3 women who are not on the right on the Supreme Court and hold them incommunicado because they're traitors. They're a threat to our country.
David, in my movie, that's the way that's the last act, because this corrupt court makes this pronouncement and then Biden summons for the arrest. So it works against them, you know what I mean? But that's in my dream movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot conceive of Joe Biden
of course not
using those powers to do anything like that, even if it means our democracy dies.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's an institutionalist. I mean, he would never rock the boat like that. This is, I don't want to sleep on this. Delwood, who's oftentimes in disagreement with me, but he does ask a question that I don't know if you want to opine on. David, your opinion on the outcome in Pennsylvania, please. 19 electoral votes, nothing else matters if a candidate loses Pennsylvania, Delwood says.
Well, that keeps being said on various news programs and in advertisements. It's not quite true. I mean, there are several different ways the Electoral College vote can go. Having said that, 19 electoral votes is a big bag of votes, and it's going to matter a great deal. And Pennsylvania, where I lived for a while, was very aptly described by James Carville as Pittsburgh and Philadelphia with Alabama in between. The lesson for both parties is if you want to win, you got to get the vote out on election day. You're seeing in Pennsylvania intense efforts by both sides. But, Donald has such important and thoughtful leaders out there making his case as Kid Rock. And Kamala Harris has, the governor, former governors, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, business leaders. So if Donald wins Pennsylvania, I think it will be a failure of the Harris people to get the vote out. And they've got, she raised more than 3 times as much money in September as Donald did. More than 3 times. That tells you there's a lot of enthusiasm. And one of the things going on right now in ads in Pennsylvania, in Lincoln Project ads and some other discussion groups, is a message to women. When you go in the voting booth, no one knows how you cast your ballot. So, you can tell your husband who says, you damn well better vote for Donald Trump. You can say, absolutely, dear. Yes, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And you go in the ballot booth and voting booth, and you cast your ballot for Kamala Harris. And I think that's a very smart strategy. As you know, I'm not a fan of television ads. I think they're way too much money for way too little effect. Door-knocking campaigns are better. But that's a pretty good ad.
Yeah, there are some good ones for sure. The other one that I think is, again, I agree with what you just said, because I think the ability to cut through the noise has been reduced because there's just so much noise now. Yeah. But if you just look at the ads associated with those who served in the Trump administration, who are now, speaking out so full-throatedly as a warning against what this guy could do, I feel like those ads really cut through as well. Speaking of ads, and then I want to get, I'll wrap up with you, but I do want to get, I know speaking of Pennsylvania, you were working for the Inquirer when the big quake hit in San Francisco, and I just want to touch that because this is we're coming up on an anniversary. Tony, do you have the ads that I asked you to lift? I really just wanted to show. Here's a quick one on.
Vice President Harris has chosen a side, her right side. Harris has made herself clear. She stands with Israel and the Jewish people.
And joining Kamala will be her husband and top advisor, Doug Emhoff,
is really a hit ad
who would be the first Jewish presidential spouse ever.
Kamala relies on her husband Doug for counsel on the toughest issues, like Israel's noble fight against the radical terrorists in Gaza. And when Doug talks, Kamala listens. Kamala and Doug, America's pro-Israel power couple.
So they're really playing that, and they are carpet bombing Michigan with that ad. They are saying, so it masquerades as, you see how virtuous they are defending Israel when they know that that's going to land in this loathsome way to a largely Arab community that occupies Michigan.
Right. Well, Dearborn has the largest concentration of Muslims in the United States. And I think we now have more Muslims in the United States than Jewish people. If not, they're very close. I've listened to a number of interviews and read a number of interviews with people in the Dearborn area, and some of the remarks are surprising. Some of them are people who say they can't vote for Kamala because she is allowing what's going on in Gaza. She's just the vice president. She doesn't have any authority to do anything. Vice president is just in waiting. It's like having two sons if you're king, a spare and an heir. and I mean, heir and a spare. So I don't know how effective that kind of ad will be. I think literally you can see that ad and go, what?
Right.
It's not that. I know what they're trying to do. Not sure they've achieved that.
It's targeted for that community, though, and that media buy, David. So maybe it will land better there.
It may, and if people see it repeated times, they may get a deeper message. And this means to me that the Harris campaign needs to spend a lot of money putting people on the ground in and around Dearborn, which is right next door to Detroit.
Sure. The quake that hit, David, you reported on that Loma Prieta quake back years ago? Was it?
I was living in Ocean City, New Jersey, which is the next island south of Atlantic City, when the quake hit, and immediately.
This is in '89. What was it? '89.
1989, November 1989. We're supposed to have the Bay Bridge World Series starting, and the TV was on the Bay Bridge Series. And you saw the pancaking of the double-decker freeway in the East Bay. And it's rush hour. And I said to my daughter, Amy, who was sitting there, oh my God, there's going to be tens of thousands of people dead. Well, it turned out that because of the baseball game, there was almost nobody on the freeway. It was almost the equivalent of 3 a.m. in terms of the volume of traffic. Almost nobody died, and at least when the upper deck collapsed, it collapsed onto the supports of the second deck, so that while car roofs got crushed, generally people were not killed. I think there were even relatively few injuries. I immediately got on an airplane, flew to Monterey, rented a car, drove up to Santa Cruz, my hometown, and what was striking to me the next day when I arrived about 1 o'clock was how devastating this was to downtown Santa Cruz. It was a charming downtown. It had been dying until a man named Chuck Abbott persuaded the city to turn it into what was called the Pacific Garden Mall, with 1 lane of traffic and grass and benches and flowers and flower boxes. And the sad part was that the Santa Cruz Sentinel, the local paper, never distinguished. Their coverage was just mediocre. I mean, when a great event like this occurs, that's when you find out how good your paper is. So the Xenia, Ohio daily paper, when a tornado destroyed downtown, won a Pulitzer Prize for their coverage. Nobody would have put the Sentinel up for anything. And frankly, the coverage I had in the Philadelphia Inquirer was superior to the Sentinel's in terms of what mattered. And the best coverage of that quake was by Pete Carey, at the San Jose Mercury, the Pulitzer Prize winning reporter whose coverage, without ever leaving the U.S., brought down the Marcos regime in the Philippines by showing how corrupt he was. The minute this happened, Pete had the same reaction I did. He went to San Francisco and asked Caltrans to see the records of the construction, and lo and behold, it turns out engineers said, boy, if we have a really bad earthquake, the double-deck freeway in the East Bay will collapse, and so we need to redesign it. And they were told, no, that's too much money. We can't afford it.
That's the scandal within the incident itself. There it is. After the Loma Prieta quake, and it was weird. You mentioned, Santa Cruz, because there were, of course, the seismic ripple really affected San Francisco and other parts of the Bay Area, as we just saw when you talk about the Bay Bridge and the.
Well, there were some big fires down in the Marina District.
Yeah,
because
I remember
gas lines broke.
That night I was at the World Series game and I came over the hill over in Pacific Heights. You're looking down on the marina and you could see it ablaze. It was really sobering. It was scary. And it's amazing that more people didn't have their lives lost during all of that.
No, it's astonishing more people didn't die. Two of my sons were doing rescue work, in one case pulling somebody out from under who survived a collapsed wall. The other one where rocks came down off one of the cliffs at one of the beaches and trapped people. And a lot of people who, we saw in the earthquake what we usually see. People are well behaved. They care about other people. They didn't loot. When we saw that in Katrina, people weren't looting. They had no water, and they went into grocery stores looking for bottled soft drinks and water so they wouldn't die. It's not looting. Yeah. But the one of the good things that came out of this, there's a great picture of the fire in the Marina District in San Francisco. One of the good things that came out of this was a strengthening of a lot of buildings in terms of earthquake damage. But I got to tell you that there is new scientific research, which none of the major news organizations have reported on, even though it's from credible, serious geologists, that the standards to which these very high-rise buildings were built in San Francisco, where the underlying earth is mud, basically.
Exactly.
And on Bunker Hill in Los Angeles and in downtown Seattle, and San Jose and Portland, they will liquefy in an earthquake of about 9 on the Richter scale. And if the underground earth liquefies, buildings fall over.
Sure.
That's just what happens. You could have one of them snap near its base if it's long enough, and suddenly you've got 40 stories of a 50-story building just shearing off and hitting the ground. And so it's very hard in a democratic society to get people to take action before a disaster like that because of the investment costs. But I think we should all be aware that the next big earthquake, and a 9 would be an enormous number because the Richter scale is a logarithmatic. So 8 doesn't mean 1 bigger than 9. It means a million times bigger. I think it's a million times bigger than 9, but I have to go look to make sure. But vastly more powerful. And we could well have a 9 earthquake anytime.
A geologist told me that the 9 earthquake, that is the big one, she said, when it hits, no one will ask, was that the big one? It will be so obvious that the damage will be so widespread. And she also said the shaking could go on for more than 2 minutes. I mean, that seemed extraordinary to me.
Well, that's where the liquefaction of soils occurs.
Sure.
When the shaking continues more than 30 seconds, that's when they start to do so. So Foster City on the peninsula, which is all built on fill with all these high-rise buildings, Foster City would be one of the places most at risk, especially since most of those high-rises were built back in the 60s and the 70s and maybe in the early 80s when the standards were a lot lower. If you're driving in an earthquake, and this has happened to me twice, what typically you suddenly feel is you're on flat tires. As the pavement is rubbling against you, your first sort of intuitive response is, I got flat tires, because that's how it feels.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah,
the liquefaction is such an important thing to talk about because so much of around the Bay Area and California generally, the marina in Los Angeles, and these are all areas unfilled, and that liquefaction happens very quickly. It would not have to.
And then natural gas pipelines break, and you end up with fires. And there are natural gas pipelines all up and down California that are 36 inches, 42 inches across, and operating at more than 1,000 feet of 1,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. And it takes, in the case of the explosion in San Bruno in 2010, or 2012, whichever year it was there, it took them, PG&E, 90 minutes to shut off the flow of gas to that fire.
Well, and they were taken to court for it, but that doesn't do much good for the people.
Thank you, Robert Snyder. It's 8 to 9 is 10 times more powerful, not a million. So
there it is.
Thank you. Thank you.
It'll feel a million. All right. Hey, David, thank you. Love your work, and we enjoy you so much here on Tuesdays. David Cay Johnston, everybody. Yeah. So long, sir. Wow. Great stuff.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow. Love my conversations with David Cay Johnston. Kim, I turn to you and Tony now on where we're going, what we're doing. I have a notable obit I'd like to get to. Maybe, in fact, there's 3 obits, but at least 2 of them are really high profile. And yet, I'm guessing only one of them you'll know, but the other is really high profile.
What did we decide to call it? Time passages or last call? Remember we were going to do an obituary segment? It used to be the obituaries, and then we decided to call it like last call, kind of like last call at the bar.
Yeah, I kind of like last call, but
No.
All right, well, I was just a thought. If somebody's got an idea,
let's do a little news, and then we'll get to last call.
All right, we're going with last call for now. All right, Kim's news, and then the last call.
Yes,
Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The race for the White House turning into a sprint. 14 days left before Election Day. Anybody nervous yet? Former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris both targeting key swing states. Trump's scheduled to hold a rally in North Carolina tonight. Vice President Harris sits down for a pair of televised interviews with NBC News and also Telemundo. A new poll shows Vice President Harris with a 3-point lead nationally over Trump. Again, 2 weeks till Election Day. The Reuters Ipsos poll shows Harris at 46%, Trump 43%. But in the same time frame, Trump beat out Harris in the Hill Decision Desk HQ's election forecast for the first time. So,
well, that's something to hang your hat on, maybe. Okay. Yeah.
Filing your taxes may be a little less painful for those taking the standard deduction in the future. The IRS announced today it is raising federal tax brackets for 2025 to help offset inflation. The standard deduction for married couples filing together will increase to $30,000, $15,000 for single taxpayers. The FBI is now working with the Pentagon to track down the intelligence leak about Israel's plans for a retaliatory strike on Iran. Multiple news outlets report over the weekend that the material, marked top secret, was posted to the Telegram messaging app on Friday. It includes documents that suggest Israeli military exercises prepare for an attack on Iran, about preparing for an Iranian counterattack as well.
Yeah, it was pretty huge that the details of a plan like that would be leaked. So I'm not surprised that they want to track it down.
Rudy Giuliani is being ordered to hand over his assets to 2 Georgia election workers that he defamed. A federal judge issued the order Tuesday requiring the former New York mayor and Trump attorney to give control of his New York penthouse, luxury watches, Mercedes-Benz, and cash to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. Last year, a jury found Giuliani defamed the mother and daughter when he claimed they took part in election fraud in 2020. He was ordered to pay the two almost $150 million. A hearing is scheduled for next week to decide if Giuliani will be able to keep a Florida condominium that he owns. But, as you said earlier, Mark, maybe there's room for him at Mar-a-Lago. So.
Yeah, right, exactly. He's got a lot of pals there at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
He knows the boss.
Maybe there's a room at Trump Tower in New York. Who knows? Orange County Supervisor Andrew Doe is resigning and agreeing to plead guilty to federal corruption charges. Doe is accused of funneling COVID relief money into the Viet America Society. That's a nonprofit for which his daughter serves as an executive. Oops. California is joining a nationwide fight for preventative health care. Attorney General Rob Bonta says this is not only life-saving, but finds the root causes of illness. He and 24 other state leaders are urging the Supreme Court to fully restore the Affordable Care Act's preventative care mandate. It requires private insurers cover services like cardiovascular disease intervention and screenings for lung, breast, and colorectal cancer as well. Home prices are falling in some California cities. A new report from Realtor.com ranks San Francisco with the biggest drop for a median price of $997,000.
God, it's still such an extraordinary amount of money.
I know, but not as much as it was. Still not affordable for the first-time home buyer. Riverside is next, listing at roughly $600,000. San Jose is price topping $1.4 million. The report also found the total number of unsold homes jumped nearly 23%, with some spending 55 days on the market. That's kind of a change from what we had been seeing. Former movie producer Harvey Weinstein has reportedly been diagnosed with a form of bone marrow cancer. NBC News reports Weinstein has chronic myeloid leukemia. He's being treated while in prison at Rikers Island in New York. Last month, he underwent emergency heart surgery after a large amount of fluid was found in his lungs and heart. In July, he was hospitalized after testing positive for COVID, had double pneumonia as well. So Weinstein not doing so well in prison.
Wow, it's a tough place to really rally. Prison will knock down your joie de vivre. You know what I mean?
So
for Weinstein, yeah, Weinstein.
On the upside, free medical care. So sorry, was that insensitive? The Oakland Athletics will play on grass at Sutter Health Park next season after Major League Baseball responded to the players' concerns about the safety of artificial turf, especially in Sacramento's extreme summer heat. Although MLB considered switching to turf due to concerns about daily use by both the A's and the Sacramento River Cats, a recent report about the concerns indicated the grass could hold up, though it might not be in peak condition during the summer. It's all right, better than the rubber sloughing off in the heat, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Safer.
A freak accident, lastly, killed a longtime surfer and travel guide. 36-year-old Italian surfer Giulia Manfrini was impaled by a swordfish off the coast of Indonesia, struck in the chest by the swordfish while surfing west of Sumatra in the Indian Ocean. Her business partner is saying she died doing what she loved.
Wow.
Right? What an accident. I guess what a way to go.
Pretty brutal. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, 1 minute you're riding the waves, and the next minute, boom.
Gosh.
Pretty awful.
That feels like the end of one of those, it feels almost cinematic, like the end of one of those, I don't know. Gosh, that's just awful.
I know.
You have anything more uplifting you can leave us with? I mean, my God.
What do I have? How about this? A box office preview. The third installment in the Venom franchise is eyeing a fast start at the box office this weekend.
It is.
Venom: The Last Dance is expected to make at least $65 million in its first weekend in theaters. The opening would be the second best for a comic book movie this year, behind Deadpool and Wolverine. Also new this weekend, the thriller Conclave is expected to make between $4 and $6 million. So,
Wow. It's called The Last Dance, the Venom movie?
Venom, The Last Dance.
The Last Dance.
Yeah.
And the sequel to that will be The Last Dance.
Yeah.
And the sequel to that will be The Last Dance, et cetera. Yeah. Interesting.
This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee.
Oh, I'm drinking it right now.
I've got the tea as well. It's some good
Coachella
stuff.
Valley Coffee. It all hits perfectly. When you order the tea or the coffee and you take a sip of that life-changing taste, the rich tasting notes, the magical quality it has, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, our discount code MARKT, 10% off. It will hit you too in the same way it hits me. Magical. You may set aside a cup or two in your kitchen cabinet just for the Coachella Valley Coffee. That's how significant the taste experience is. All organic and from women-owned farms. Great coffee is our mission, our craft, and our passion. They have tea, they have coffee, they have tasting notes. If you have questions, you can contact them. It is a boutique roastery, and it's hand-roasted. They source all of these beans through these businesses that I say are owned by women, and these businesses are often given seed money by Coachella Valley Coffee people so that they're able to actually help them build businesses across Latin America, across Africa. It's really a terrific crew. Of course, the Roastmaster General is Cliff. He is going to join us again toward the holidays. You might even have a special holiday blend coming. There he is. That's Cliff, and that's me on the stop through Coachella Valley Coffee. But I wish for all of you that you go to the site, find the thing that you want to try, and then enter our discount code MARKT at checkout for 10% off. It's award-winning. A lot of letters. I get emails from people who are so happy. Here's something. Lanzetta says, smooth and buttery coffee, just like Mark's voice.
Oh,
Ooh,
nice.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
I love it how you talk that trash. Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Speaking of your voice,
Yes.
I was at my mom's house because she recently had surgery, so I've been kind of taking care of her. And I had her watch yesterday's segment with Greg Palast. And we were in front of her computer, and I hit play, and you started to speak. And she goes, I just love his voice. It's so soothing.
Oh.
Just to let you know.
I like it.
Apparently,
So,
my mom's a fan.
There are people in the family who do like me, is what here's the point.
There are.
I can't get the daughter to like me.
Yeah,
but
but the mom?
Yeah, but the mom is on board.
I blame you.
All right. It's
Apparently,
probably my fault
you're
somehow.
big with the moms. Yeah.
The moms love me. That is key. Well, I love your news, and by extension, you as well. So I love it, Kim.
Let's
Thank
lock it
you.
out. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson.
Put that coffee down.
I've tried to do the best I can.
I'm not gonna cry! I'm not gonna cry!
We have processes and protocols and standards.
What can you tell us about the scene?
I'm a better looking person than Kamala.
The audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
I've tried to do the best I can. That is a damning non-answer.
I love it. I love it. The damning non-answers. Trying to do the best I can. Gosh, it is a bit anxiety-inducing, the last charge to the finish line. And all of these polls are within the margin of error. I think there's some standout aspects to some of these polls. Kim, I believe, did have one for you, like that there appears to be a nudge ahead for Harris here at the finish line. Now, that's a national poll. But I also would say this to you. I'm just looking at some of these poll numbers. The latest Emerson poll is pretty strong. I guess the lead on that is that in the swing states, which is sort of what Delwood was asking about the swing state, in Pennsylvania, et cetera. I think you do want to know about swing states because we all know how the system is gamed, right? Doesn't matter the popular vote. It matters maybe if you care about a mandate, but these guys don't care about a mandate. They just want to kick the door open and get rid of government, I think, on the right. But the swing state race is virtually tied. They say that Trump has his strongest leads in Arizona and in North Carolina. North Carolina, where he got the pin from the McDonald's fryer pin. And Kamala Harris has her widest margins in Georgia and Wisconsin. Neither one of these people, Harris or Trump, is ahead by more than 4 points. So everything's within the margin of error. And in the 7 battleground states, Harris is ahead by 1 point overall. In Arizona, Trump ahead by 3. Georgia has Harris ahead by 4, 51 to 47. North Carolina, I mentioned Trump is up by 3, 50 to 47. Pennsylvania, Harris leads by 2 points in the Washington Post Shar poll. She had a 3-point lead in a pair of New York Times and Philadelphia Inquirer Siena College polls that were released last week. The Wall Street Journal and Emerson polls, though, both found that Trump had a 1-point lead. So again, these are conflicting polls in Pennsylvania.
It's maddening.
It really is on some level.
Can we zero in on Arizona for just a moment? Because I think you just said that's where Trump is ahead.
Right.
And
yeah.
Arizona is one of the states where there's a case pending over these false Trump electors, right? How could the voters in Arizona be so inclined to have Trump ahead in their state to be voting for someone who tried to steal their voice with fake electors? I mean, don't you think that would piss voters off to no end?
The number of things that you have to look the other way on in the case of Trump is extraordinary. You have to look the other way on his attempted coup, and as you say, complete with a fake electors scheme to overthrow the government. And then finally, the Hail Mary was the violent coup at the Capitol. But you have to look past all of that. You spend so much time, I think, wrapped up in your own sense of anxiety about, this is, again, a Trump voter would say, the border, it's out of control, and they hit the border hard. Even as this guy doesn't really care about the border, you know that, because he was ready to, he gummed up, in effect, the way that border legislation was going to breeze through Congress. It was GOP legislation. It was written by a conservative GOP senator. It only pisses off those that didn't vote for Trump in Arizona. Exactly. Right.
But it shouldn't. It's the most un-American thing you can do, right? Trying to steal an American election, trying to steal the voice of voters. It's completely un-American. Again, I think his citizens should be stripped and he should be kicked out of the country. All of his property seized. Like, this is the most un-American thing you can do. So I don't care if you voted for Trump and you supported him to win. If you know he did that, that should be it for everybody. Everybody. And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Mark, is about Republicans switching over and it being okay to vote for a Democrat because of the egregious nature of what happened.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point you make, because I think that is the linchpin to that, which is, we're not going to vote for this guy. We can't look the other way on this. This is, again, among the greatest crimes one could commit against this nation. Lots of super rich people partying in Arizona, Cheryl Massarelli says. I have a few relatives there. It's all about money. Yeah, when you look at the super rich and just the generally wealthy, they have a lot of control, and they do benefit immensely from a Trump presidency. Just refer to the Jim Avila comment on the rest of it. Which, right, the Jim Avila comment was...
There's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
Now, they're idiots for not seeing that they're voting against their own interests. I guess that might be the idiocy. Hey, Tony, can I leave everyone? It has to be immigration fear-mongering. The right wing has sane-washed Trump so much, it's crazy how easy it is for people to forget Trump's insanity. I think that's exactly right. There's a sane washing that's also associated with the media wanting a horse race. And you don't get a horse race if you really call out one of the horses as not legitimate. It's really a remarkable moment in time that we have reached. I have an obit for you that I'm going to share with you, but before I get to that, just because we're talking politics right now, play the Ossoff comments. I thought they were really good. This is the Georgia senator. Also, he's a Democrat. Do you still have it, Tony? I know we had it at the beginning of the show. Poor Tony. I skip around so much.
Give me 1 minute.
Okay, I skip around so much, and I just dump all this stuff on him because I'm not just so sure what we're going to use. But I really like this comment. Here he is. This is John Ossoff in Georgia. Go ahead.
No one, and I mean no one, is interested in or takes seriously lectures on border security from Senate Republicans. No one. In one of the most stunning acts of political cowardice in recent American history, a bipartisan border security bill co-authored by a conservative Republican member of this committee was put forward in the U.S. Senate. It would have tightened asylum standards to stop exploitation of the asylum system. It would have surged enforcement resources to the border. It would have meant more expedited removals of those who enter this country unlawfully. It would have empowered the federal government to take the fight to the drug cartels who are laying waste to communities across our country with fentanyl. A bipartisan border security bill co-authored by a conservative Republican member of this committee. And it wasn't just voted down by Senate Republicans, it was denied even a debate on the floor of the United States Senate. Because the former president of the United States, and he said this publicly, thought it wasn't in his political interest for the nation to be served. It wasn't in his political interest for a bipartisan border security bill to be enacted by Congress. The American people are smart. So all of the performative chest pounding today on border security is utterly disingenuous. When Senate Republicans abrogated their basic governing responsibility and refused even to let us debate and amend that bipartisan border security proposal, the American people see that and understand that.
Yeah, that I thought was really a great run. When you talk about immigration, you keep coming back to it. I just felt Ossoff was so perfect there. So I wanted to share that with you today. I'm glad we got to it. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't want to leave you today without saying goodbye to a couple of significant figures that you may be familiar with and maybe a figure that you're not familiar with. I'll start with the figure that you are familiar with. This was a loss felt, I think, more acutely by our own Tony, who is an Iron Maiden fan. Am I right, Tony?
Thanks, Tony.
Just saw him last week.
And tell me about this guy. Who died?
Paul Di'Anno, their original singer, who hasn't been on since, Killer, their second album. But
he's been sick for several years, right?
Yeah, he's been in a wheelchair and just... And actually, Steve Harris and him finally, the original bass player kind of buried a lot of the bad blood, I guess you could say. And I guess he paid for a lot of his surgeries trying to help him out, but who knows? And Bruce Dickinson and Paul Di'Anno just did a cool like meetup a few weeks back, and that was cool.
He was 66
Bruce
years
Dickinson
old.
is a current singer of that band, but he's been the singer since the 80s. So yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, I like the Paul Di'Anno albums. They're good.
Passed away at his home in Salisbury, and no cause of death. But as
Like,
Tony said,
he hadn't been in good health, but
yeah.
Either way,
the Baywatch actor Michael Newman has passed away. He was 68 years old.
He was a real lifeguard, right?
He was diagnosed 18 years ago with Parkinson's disease.
Oh.
Pretty amazing. The guy who directed the Hulu docuseries After Baywatch said that he died from heart complications, surrounded by family and friends. And then there is this. This is the high-profile person that you won't know the name. Tony Vaz. Now, Tony Vaz is a remarkable person. She's an actor turned pioneering stunt performer. She went on to found the NAACP Awards.
Look at what a cool lady she looks like with her sunglasses on. Yeah.
She grew up in New York City. Her mom was from Barbados, wouldn't let her watch movies. The mom had a very strict home. But when she came of age, Vaz headed to Hollywood. She was cast as an extra in the 1959 feature Tarzan the Ape Man. She did a scene opposite MGM's Leo the Lion. She later had small roles in a bunch of other movies that are pretty high profile for the time. And that led her to a new career in stunt work. That was a first for a black woman. She performed stunts for groundbreaking actors like Cicely Tyson. She stood in for Eartha Kitt, Juanita Moore. She was in Mission Impossible. Soon she was traveling the world performing all kinds of daring feats in front of the camera, including dangling from helicopters. She amassed more than 50 screen credits, 20,000 plus hours of performance. During a 2006 tribute to the Black Stuntmen's Association by the Las Vegas City Council, Vaz said, quote, "Before they formed this great Stuntmen Association, I did a lot of the work, and we had very little pay for it. But today we're doing much better." You can imagine. She was paid very little, and as a black stunt person, paid even less than the white people.
Not to mention as a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So she founded the NAACP Image Awards to honor her peers and encourage studios and producers to hire and honor a wider range of talent. The first ceremony was in 1967 at the Beverly Hills Hotel's International Ballroom, and she would get the Image Awards Founders Award in 2021. From 1967 to 2021, she finally got that Founders Award and recognized for all of her work. She, this is a person who came up at a time when there were very few roles open to black talent in Hollywood. And she not only was able to make a living, but she was able to create a living legacy. And she lived to 101 years of age.
Wow.
So she
imagine with all the risks she took. That's a pretty big feat, right?
Thank you. I had the same thought.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. So rest in peace to an innovator and someone who really changed the landscape, Tony Vaz. Rest in peace, my dear. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right. We still need a final name for that segment, or,
Yeah.
Somebody had a good one, by the way, just on the Obit thing. What do you think of this? Sunset Theater. Maybe something with sunset or theater works.
Like that. Yeah.
Well, I do. Maybe it does, huh?
Yeah.
Sunset Theater might work, from Kay Plant. Thank you, Kay.
Nice, Kay. Well done.
Yeah, well done. Well, we'll call it Sunset Theater then from now on.
It's a little less kind of insensitive than Last Call. You think at a bar, like your last drink or something.
Right.
Yeah, I like Sunset Theater.
I liked Last Call in its own irreverent way, but I think Sunset Theater is a little more keeping with the show vibe now.
Yeah.
Dave, and cleaning up comments that were left through the show that we wanted to get to. Dave on Rudy Giuliani, what a shame the guy single-handedly took down the New York mob, then he hitched his wagon to Trump and flushed everything. Yeah, I agree that he's a complicated guy, and maybe that was his best. I would argue that if you actually go back and look at Rudy Giuliani, he showed signs of a lot of this duplicity and a corrupt nature, not from the standpoint of pay to play, but from the standpoint of less than righteous all the time. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. It's part of a much bigger... I'll tell you, there's a great documentary on Rudy Giuliani. I want to say it's on... It might have been a PBS Frontline, but I would recommend it. So anyway, but clearly this is a guy who's fallen, regardless of how corrupted he was, just philosophically or however you want to look at it in the past. The decades have not been kind to him, and he's turned into a cartoonish caricature of corrupt. And Rudy Giuliani, despicable guy, grotesque, despicable man, deserves to lose everything. What he did to those Georgia poll workers is beyond the pale. I mean, he deserves to lose everything.
Yeah.
B.A. Ware says, think of how stupid the average person is and realize half of them are stupider than that. That's a George Carlin line. I've never heard that line. That's wild.
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
I've heard that line, but I'd never heard think of how stupid the average person is and realize half of them are stupider than that. That's really funny. Anyway, I love our commenters. I love our audience. And
the Mark Thompson Show.
It pains me to leave. Alas, we must. Now, tomorrow, what do we have, Kim?
We have, musically loud, we have Andy Fracknoy coming on the show tomorrow.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
John
we're the only show that
Rothman
calls him
will be here.
Andy. He is Professor
Fracknoy.
Andrew Fracknoy.
Professor Andrew Fracknoy will be here to talk about the cosmos. Yeah.
Well, there's a comet that just came through. I think he's going to comment on that. He's going to comment on the comet. And then, of course, tomorrow we have John Rothman. So Rothman, I will pepper with questions, and we'll get into a big sort of rugby scrum of disagreement as we want to do. Later in the week, we also have special guests, do we not? I think we got Anthony Davis coming by from the Midas Touch Network.
Oh, Politics Girl will be with us on Thursday.
Politics Girl on Thursday. It's going to be a great, and of course, David Katz as well.
I'm Sheriff Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
So there's a lot still to come this week.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
We are sadly out of time. Kim's over on the After Party Live. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.